97.1. You're joined now by Mailee Smith of Illinois Policy Institute. Mailee, thanks for giving us some of your time today to try to figure out the latest goings-on in Illinois with the potential worker strike.
Sure, it's great to talk with you.
So, set the table for me. We saw this week that there was a pretty substantial vote in favor of striking, but that doesn't mean people stop showing up to work on Monday. Tell me what the issue is that Illinois is facing with these state and local workers, and what the vote actually was about earlier this week.
Sure. Well, Illinois state workers, represented by AFSCME, which is the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, that's the largest government union in Illinois. They've been without a contract it'll be 2 years in June. And contract negotiations came to a halt last January, and ever since then, the Labor Relations Board here has been trying to decide whether or not the parties are at impasse. And they did decide that the parties are at impasse. That basically just means any further negotiations is totally futile. They're not going to move, and so that also meant that the Governor Rauner, could implement his last best offer to the union. But the union doesn't want to take that last best offer, even though it's a completely reasonable offer. And so instead, they've taken to the courts to fight the governor there. They want to fight implementation of the contract. And then this is just the latest step, that they have now taken a strike vote to see if their membership is willing to go on strike. The numbers are actually lower than what AFSCME indicated because they didn't take into a number of variables when they made their announcement. But I wouldn't say that a strike is imminent. Like, as you mentioned, they're not going to be walking out the door come Monday. Mm-hmm. The state law requires that before there would be a strike, the union has to give the state 5 days notice. I really think that this is just a ploy in AFSCME's game, or just another round of PR for them to be able to try to paint the governor as unreasonable when it's really the other way around.
We're speaking with Mailee Smith of the Illinois Policy Institute. So can you kind of tell me what's the workers union asking for, and what is Illinois saying, or the governor, I guess, saying, no, we will offer this? So what is the union asking for, and what are they turning down?
Yeah, so I want to preface that by saying Illinois state workers are already the highest paid state workers in the nation when adjusted for cost of living. They have, if they're a career retiree, they have free health care at retirement. They have a pension that is worth like $1.6 million when they retire, the average employee. Mm-hmm. So they have a pretty sweet deal already. What they are wanting, and actually, let me phrase it like this. What the governor would like to do, Illinois is in dire straits, right, in terms of finances. And so what the governor is asking for this contract, to place a temporary 4-year wage freeze for the workers. Okay. Remember, they're already the highest paid workers in the nation in terms of state workers. So
let me interject real quick here. Are they currently getting annual raises like clockwork?
They are. The raises are not based on merit. It's just based on seniority. They call them steps and lanes. So if you're there a certain amount of time, you just automatically get a raise every year.
So the current setup right now is so that a worker in this union is getting annual raises based on showing up to work that are taxpayer funded. And, to clarify, as a taxpayer in Illinois, my raises are not based on whether or not I show up. I got to fight tooth and nail to get those raises. So right now they're in a situation where the raises are expected, anticipated, and they're paid out, even though we're in the situation that we are in Illinois. However, the governor is saying, "Hey, let's hold our breath for 4 years and get acclimated." Is that
exactly?
Okay, go on.
That's exactly what's happening. Another thing that he is asking for is a 40-hour work week before overtime kicks in. AFSCME is screaming about this. They want to work 37 and a half hours a week.
So do I.
Before overtime works in. Wouldn't that be great?
So do I.
The rest of the world, the rest of the state should just be rolling their eyes at this. Like, these demands that they are placing on Illinoisans are just outside anything that we would ever expect in the private sector. Another thing that they're asking for is just platinum level health insurance coverage at a rock bottom price. What the governor would like to do is to increase their premiums, to increase their contributions some. Now, right now, the state is subsidizing 77% of state worker health care.
Huh.
The governor would like to make that 60. He would like a 60-40 split instead of a 77-23 split. So he's not asking for anything extraordinary. He would like the state to subsidize 60%, the workers to subsidize 40. They would still be getting from the state over $11,500 a year in health care from the state, which is, clearly a decent amount of money from any perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you define for me, tell me some of the jobs, we have neighbors who are directly affected by whatever happens with this union decision. What kind of people are we talking about? Because these are normal people that you sit next to at a ball game or go to church with or whatever. What kind of people work underneath this union?
Sure. It's actually a very broad spectrum. So it covers anything from well-paid interns to doctors, physician specialists that work for, like, the Department of Health, civil engineers, revenue agents. So it's a broad spectrum. It includes workers in the Department of Corrections, but one note is that if there is a strike, security officers can't walk off the job. So we do have coverage under state law that positions that are security or safety positions, they are not eligible to strike. So it covers a broad spectrum. Workers in the Department of Transportation. So there's no one type of office or that this union covers. It's just a broad spectrum.
Does this include, when people think of people who get paid based on tax dollars, they think of police officers, firefighters, teachers, people who work in education. Does this include those people as well?
It does not. Those would all be covered. Teachers, for example, are covered under their own collective bargaining agreements in their own school districts. Same with police and fire. Now, it does include some state police offices, but when you think of a state police officer who's pulling you over on the side of the road for going too fast on the interstate, it's not going to include someone like that.
Okay, so what's the next step here? So they've voted potentially to go on strike. That doesn't automatically imply that anybody who is a member of this union is excited to go on strike by any means. Strike is not fun for anybody involved. What's the next step here? What do we expect to happen, and when do we expect it to happen?
Well, the timeline is really vague at this point in time. AFSCME, as I mentioned previously, is fighting the governor in court over implementation of the contract. And Executive Director Roberta Lynch, who's the Executive Director of AFSCME, what she indicated during the press conference this week is that this is just kind of their last resort. They want to have this in their pocket in case things don't go their way in court. Now, whether or not you can take that at face value, I don't know. But it sounds like they don't plan to go on strike unless the courts go a different direction. But in terms of, for state workers, they're really held in limbo by their union right now. They don't know what's going to be coming.
Last question here with Mailee Smith of the Illinois Policy Institute. Does this contract have to be fully negotiated and accepted before we can have a state budget?
It does not. The two things are not necessarily, they are not legally connected, whether or not certain politicians make them politically connected. That's a different question. But you don't have to have an AFSCME contract before a budget or vice versa. You don't have to have a budget before an AFSCME contract.
All right. Tell all the listeners, what's the best way to follow Illinois Policy Institute and yourself? I love everything that comes out of you guys because you have so much information. You have so many facts, and it's really nice and refreshing to just read some facts. So what's the best way for people to stay in touch with Illinois Policy Institute?
We are at www.illinoispolicy.org, and all of our information on labor is there. And if there's a state worker who is interested in learning more, they can. We have a new website called www.afscme.solutions, and we have some information there about what their options are should the union look like they're going on strike.
And if somebody wants to speak to somebody about supporting the governor or weighing in on this because they're making decisions on our behalf, what do you encourage them to do? Do you encourage them to reach out to their representative, their senator? What's the best policy?
I would say to reach out to either the representative or their senator. Their local representative needs to hear what the community thinks about the AFSCME contract. Now, the local representative is not negotiating the contract, but it certainly helps for them to know what their community is thinking.
Definitely. Well, Mailee Smith from the Illinois Policy Institute, illinoispolicy.org, we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That was my interview with Mailee Smith of the Illinois Policy Institute for my Saturday show just this past weekend, which airs on 97.1 from 5 to 7 p.m. We're going to take a break here real quick. When we come back, Tony Colombo is going to hit us with a Twitter poll, and we're going to talk a little Nelly, a little Mike Piazza, and a little St. Louis Eatery, and we are going to get our final giraffe update. And this giraffe baby has 20 minutes to be born to fit into my plan. I wonder if